Have you ever stopped to think about the impact that masturbation can have on your physical and mental health after the age of 50? And if I tell you that this practice, so surrounded by taboos and prejudice, be directly influencing your well-being in ways that you may not even imagine? Many avoid talking about it. They feel ashamed, hide their own sexuality as if it was something that no longer belonged to them. But today, we will speak openly, bluntly, without fear, because the truth needs to be told, and you deserve to know what really happens to your body and your mind when you keep this habit often. Society wants to convince you that desire disappears with age, that pleasure is a young thing, that after a while, we must accept the lack of libido, body pain, insomnia, constant stress. But is this true? Or is there anything that can be done to keep pleasure alive, intact self-esteem, and sexual health in balance? There are many lies being told around, many outdated beliefs that make you doubt yourself, your own body, your ability to feel pleasure. And that's exactly why this subject needs to be treated clearly and shamelessly. Have you ever felt that your body no longer responds as before? That spontaneous desire to be close to someone or simply touching yourself diminishing over time? This is no coincidence. Your body is changing, and masturbation can be both an ally and a villain in this process. The way you relate to your own body directly impacts your emotional health, your everyday energy, your sleep quality, and even your longevity. But few people talk about it. Few people dares to face the reality of desire in maturity. Science has already proven that masturbation has undeniable benefits, but there are also poorly commented risks. Did you know that the excess may be making you more tired, more angry, less willing for activities that once gave you pleasure? Yes, this may be happening, and many people do not realize until it is too late. Momentary pleasure can become a vicious cycle, an emotional refuge, a silent escape from loneliness. And when this happens, sexuality, which should be a source of well-being, becomes a weight, something that drains its strength instead of revitalizing them. But what if there was a way to balance it all? If there was a way to enjoy the benefits without falling into the traps? Because yes, masturbation can be a powerful ally in hormonal regulation, maintaining blood circulation, and even preventing certain health problems. But what few people know is that the way you practice, the frequency, the intensity, and even your emotional state at the moment make all the difference in the impact it will have on your life. Have you ever felt that inexplicable tiredness, that feeling that the body is heavy, without energy, as if something was draining you slowly? What if I told you that it may be related to your masturbation habit? It may seem strange at first glance, but the truth is that excess may compromise your energy level, interfere with your hormones, and even affect your daily motivation. Some people perceive this only when the impact is already too big, when the disposition disappears, when the sleep does not come, when the mood oscillates for no apparent reason. But the good news is that there are clear signs that indicate whether this habit is helping or harming you. And don't think this happens only with men. Many women go through the same process and do not even realize. Menopause already brings enough changes to the body, and the way you deal with your desire can enhance or relieve these effects. Some women report that masturbation helps them deal with vaginal dryness, stress, lack of physical contact. Others say they feel exhausted, perceive a negative impact on libido, that the pleasure that once seemed like a relief became an obligation, a difficult need to control. Have you noticed changes in your sleep, in your mood, at your disposal throughout the day? It may not just be aging. It may be related to the way you connect with your own body, because masturbation, when balanced, can be an ally in your health. But when it becomes an escape, an automatic habit, it may be undermining your forces silently. This is why understanding the limits is so essential. Know how good it does this, and when it starts to wear out. What if I told you that your body still has much more to offer you? That pleasure does not need to disappear, just need to be understood in a new form. You don't have to conform to a life without desire, without connection, without that flame that made you feel alive. But it cannot ignore the signs that your body gives you. Perhaps it is time to reevaluate, to understand how this practice is really influencing your health. What do you feel after? How is your emotional state? How does this reflect on your daily life? Many ignore these questions until the impact becomes too big to ignore. But you don't have to wait for that point. You can now understand how to find this balance, how to benefit from this practice without falling into the traps that so many people are unaware of. You can recover your energy, your vitality, your disposition. But for that, you need to be willing to face the truth, to look at yourself more carefully, to understand what is really happening with your body and your mind. Masturbation doesn't have to be a taboo, but it can't be a secret either you run away. There is a way to enjoy the benefits without side effects, to maintain your health in balance, to live this phase of life with more pleasure and well-being. But the decision to seek this balance is in your hands. What will you choose? If you feel that your energy is different, that your disposition is no longer the same, or that your relationship with pleasure has changed, know that this is not a chance. Your body gives you signs all the time, but we are not always alert to interpret them the right way. Masturbation, when practiced in a balanced way, can be an ally for your health, but when it becomes an automatic, unmisterious habit, it may be wearing you without you realizing it. And maybe you have already noticed that. Perhaps there are days when you feel more tired than you should, without explanation. Sleep is no longer the same. Concentration runs away. Patience decreases. Small signs that could be attributed to age, but may be related to excessive stimulation of the nervous system. Pleasure, when seeking constantly, can become a cycle of dependence, and this is a dangerous trap, especially for those who are already dealing with other hormonal changes. What many do not know is that the brain responds to pleasure very similar to how addictive substances reacts. The dopamine release during masturbation brings a sense of immediate reward, but when this happens repeatedly, your body may begin to depend on this stimulus to produce well-being. Over time, what was once a natural pleasure can become a constant need, a search for relief that never seems enough, and that's where the imbalances arise. Have you noticed that sometimes, after a moment of pleasure, instead of relaxing, do you feel anxious, restless, as if something wasn't right? This is because your body is trying to find a new balance, dealing with the peaks and falls of neurotransmitters released in the process. Excessive pleasure can be a trigger for emotional instability, lack of energy, for that inexplicable feeling of exhaustion that comes for no apparent reason. But the good news is that all this can be adjusted. Your body has an incredible ability to regenerate, to find balance again. The first step is to understand the signs. Do you feel that your disposition has changed, that your routine was affected, that your relationship with pleasure is no longer the same? So maybe it's time to reevaluate. It is not about eliminating desire, repressing what is natural, but of finding a healthier and conscious way of living it. Because pleasure needs to be something that strengthens you, not that exhausts you. It must bring you more vitality, more joy, more well-being. If you feel that instead you are draining your energy, then something needs to change. And that doesn't mean giving up your sexuality, but rescuing a more balanced and respectful relationship with your own body. Your pleasure must be your ally, not your enemy. And age need not be a limiting factor. Desire does not disappear over time. It only transforms itself. And it's up to you to understand this transformation. Learn to deal with it in a way that does you good. Your body still has a lot to offer, but for that, it needs to be treated with respect, carefully. Masturbation can be a way to this, but only if it is consciously lived, without excesses, without guilt, without unnecessary wear. Have you ever wondered what your life would look like if your energy was like before? If that inexplicable tiredness disappeared? If you could wake up more willing, with more mood for your activities, with more presence in your daily life? This is possible, and it all starts with small changes, with a new way of looking at your own pleasure, your needs, your relationship with your body. Pleasure is a fundamental part of life, but it needs to be lived with balance. No exaggeration, no compulsion, without becoming an escape valve for other problems that need to be solved the other ones. Because often masturbation becomes a refuge for loneliness, anxiety, for boredom. But these issues need to be addressed at the root, not just masked by passing moments of pleasure. Perhaps you have noticed that over the years your relationship with pleasure has changed, and that is normal. But if this change brought more wear than satisfaction, then it is worth stopping and reflecting. Your body is telling you something. Your mind is sending you signals, and ignoring them will only lead you to a path of tiredness, more frustration, more feeling of empty. What if there was a way to recover your energy without having to give up pleasure? If there was a way to keep your sexuality alive without falling into the traps that drain your vitality? This is possible, and it all starts with conscience, with attention to detail, with respect for your own rhythm. You don't have to deprive yourself of pleasure, but you can't let it consume you either. Finding this balance is the key to a healthier, more full, more satisfactory life. So the question that remains is, what do you choose for yourself? If you could feel lighter, more balanced, more connected with yourself, without this weight of tiredness, restlessness, the feeling that something is not right, would you take this step? Because deep down, what is at stake here is not just masturbation. It is the way you have lived your relationship with pleasure, with your body, with your emotions. Many people come to this phase of life carrying wrong beliefs about sexuality. They were taught to see desire as something fleeting which disappears over time, as if after a certain age, the body became a simple spectator of life. But this is not true. The desire is there. Pleasure is still possible. What changes is the way you experience it, how it manifests itself, how it impacts your routine and your well-being. The question is not to masturbate or not. The question is, how is this affecting you? How is this influencing your mood, your willingness, your way of relating to others and yourself? Do you feel that this practice strengthens you or wears you? That it brings balance or imbalance? Because pleasure must be something that renews, fills, that brings genuine satisfaction. When he begins to generate more restlessness than comfort, it's time to reevaluate. And the problem is that many people only realize it too late. They only realize when sleep is already deregulated, when tiredness has already taken over, when life seems to be lived in the automatic. But you don't have to reach this point. You can look at it now. You can start to understand what is behind your choices, your habits, the sensations that come later. And from that, you can make more conscious, healthier, more aligned with what you really want for yourself. And perhaps the biggest trap of excess masturbation is precisely this. It may seem harmless, but gradually it can take a larger space than it should in your life. It can become an escape, an emotional addiction, a way to fill a void that in fact cannot be filled with physical pleasure only. Many people realize that the more they turn to this habit, the more they need it. But they feel the need to seek that momentary relief without realizing that deep down, what is missing is not that. Because sometimes it is not the pleasure that is missing. It is human contact. It's the touch. It is the affection. It is the real exchange with someone else. And when this need is not met, the brain seeks alternatives, seeks substitutions. But no substitution can really take the place of what is essential. No solitary practice can completely replace what is lived in two. And when this replacement becomes a pattern, when masturbation becomes the only escape for repressed emotions, the imbalance begins to appear. Have you ever felt that even after pleasure, something is still missing? That satisfaction comes, but soon leaves. That instead of feeling invigorated, do you feel empty, more anxious, more attached to a cycle that seems to have no end? This does not happen by chance. This is because your body and mind are asking for something different, something that you may not have yet to see yourself. And this is the point where many people get stuck. They think the problem is in them. They think they are wrong for feeling desire or wrong for feeling tired. But it is not about right or wrong. It is about balance. It is about understanding what really makes you good and what is just masking other deeper issues. It is about realizing the difference between a pleasure that renews and a pleasure that runs out. Because yes, pleasure can be a way to happiness, well-being, for connection with yourself, but only when it is lived in a balanced, conscious way, without exaggeration, without guilt, without the need to compensate for other lack, which actually need to be filled in another way. So maybe it's time to ask yourself, what is your body telling you? What has your mind been trying to show you? Has this habit been really an ally for your health, well-being, for your energy? Or has he occupied a larger space than he should, moving you away from what really matters? What if there was a way of recovering your vitality without giving up pleasure? If there was a way to live your sexuality more fully without it becoming a weight or source of wear? If there was a way to balance it all and live this phase of your life more lightly, more joy, more connection with yourself? Because this path exists, but only those who are willing to see the truth can follow it, and the truth is before you now. What are you going to do with her? If you have gotten here, it is because at some level you feel that this subject resonates within you. Perhaps you have noticed signs in your own body, in your routine, in your emotions. Perhaps you have wondered silently if what you feel is normal, if you should change something, if there is another way to live your relationship with pleasure. And the answer is that yes, there is always another way. There is always room for adjustments, for more conscious choices, for small changes that can completely transform your experience. Because the truth is that your body still has a lot to offer. Your desire still exists. Your ability to feel pleasure has not disappeared. It just needs to be understood in a new way. But before any change, you need to understand what is happening now. Because nothing changes without conscience. Nothing improves without a decision to look inside first, to see standards, to question habits that once seemed harmless. So I ask you, how has your relationship with pleasure been? Do you feel that it strengthens or exhausts you? Do you feel that you are in control, or that somehow this habit began to control you? Do you feel that the pleasure you seek brings true relief, or just a momentary rest before a new wave of dissatisfaction? Because that is the key. That is the question that defines everything. Pleasure needs to be an ally, never a weight. It must bring more life, more color, more energy to your daily life. If what you feel later is tiredness, it is irritation, it is an increasing need to seek this relief. So something is not right. Your body is asking for balance. Your mind is asking for a new way. And ignoring it will only lead you to more wear, more uncontrolled, more dissatisfaction disguised as pleasure. And you can choose different. You can recover your energy, your vitality, your genuine joy. You can feel willing to wake up. You can feel your mind lighter, your body more awake, your connection with the strongest world. But for that, it is necessary to break free from automatic standards. It must be understood that not all pleasure is healthy, that not all momentary satisfaction leads to lasting well-being. Because true satisfaction does not come from excess, but from balance. It comes from consciousness, respect for one's own body, the ability to recognize what really makes us good. And when this consciousness comes, everything changes. Pleasure transforms itself. Energy renews itself. The relationship with itself is strengthened. So now I ask you, are you willing to look at this more carefully? Are you willing to get out of this automatic cycle and build a healthier relationship with your own body? Are you willing to live this phase of your life more fully without letting unconscious habits drain your strength and joy? If you feel that something you need to change, that your energy is no longer the same, that there is a tiredness that is not only explained by age, so maybe it's time to pay more attention to what is happening within you. Pleasure can be a powerful ally, but when lived without balance, it can become a silent trap, a cycle that holds instead of freeing. You may have realized this in little things. At your disposal when you wake up, your patience to deal with the day, in your motivation to do what you once gave you pleasure. Perhaps it has noticed that certain activities no longer seem so interesting that there is an invisible weight on their shoulders, a sense of wear that accumulates for no apparent reason. But the reason exists, and often he is hidden in the habits that we repeat without realizing it, in the way we seek immediate relief without considering the long-term impact. Masturbation, when used as an exhaust, may seem harmless at first, but gradually it begins to modify its energy, its perception of pleasure, its relationship with its own body. And if this habit is making you more tired than renewed, then it's time to question, to look at yourself honestly, to realize to what extent this is bringing you benefits and how much has become a disguised weight of pleasure. Because it is not about giving up what is good for you, but of adjusting, balancing, turning the way you live your sexuality. Your body needs rest. Your mind needs clarity. Your pleasure needs to be lived consciously so that it does not become a habit that consumes its energy rather than invigorating it. And when you find this balance, everything improves. Your disposition comes back. Your self-esteem strengthens. Its relationship with pleasure becomes lighter, more natural, healthier. And that's exactly what many people don't realize. They think they are just following what the body asks, without realizing that often what the body really needs is different from what the mind wants at the moment. Desire can be misleading. It may seem a call to pleasure when it is actually a sign that something deeper needs attention. Have you ever wondered what is behind this habit? What do you really seek when you give it to him? Is it just physical pleasure, or is there anything else? An attempt to fill a void, a way to deal with boredom, a way to forget for a moment loneliness, anxiety, fear of time passing. These are questions we don't always want to answer, but they bring clarity. They show where the problem really is and where the solution really is. Because lonely pleasure is not wrong, desire is not wrong. But when they become a crutch, when they start to take up a larger space than they should, you need to stop and look at it more carefully. You deserve a pleasure that strengthens you, not that wears you. A pleasure that brings you more life, more energy, more true satisfaction. And that is possible. But first, you need to make an adjustment. You need to get out of the automatic. It must be understood that your energy is too precious to be wasted in vicious cycles that make you more tired than happy. And this change begins now. The moment you decide to look at yourself with more awareness, the moment you realize that there is another way, a path where pleasure is not something that holds you, but something that sets you free, where pleasure is not an escape, but a choice, where it is not a weight, but a source of genuine vitality. And now that you know that, you feel this, the question that remains is, are you ready to take this step, to break free from what exhausts you and recover your true energy, to transform your relationship with pleasure and thus transform your life? Because the decision is yours, always has been, and only you can choose what to do with this truth that is now before you. Now that you understand how masturbation can influence your energy, your mood, and your mood, it's time to reflect on what really makes sense to you. Your pleasure must be a source of well-being, not a habit that exhausts you. Your body and mind deserve balance, deserve more conscious choices, deserve to be treated with the respect you have always given to everything that is important in your life. If you have realized that something you need to change, know that small decisions can completely transform your relationship with pleasure and, consequently, to your own energy. The secret is to pay attention to the signs your body gives you and understand that true pleasure comes from balance, consciousness, respect for rhythm itself. There is no right or wrong, but there is what is good and what holds you in a aware cycle. Now you have the information. You can make better choices for your physical and emotional well-being. You can live this phase of life with more lightness, more joy, and fuller. If this content has made sense to you, share this reflection with who can benefit from it. We will continue to demystify taboos and bring more clarity on topics that really impact the quality of life. And remember, your pleasure, your energy, and your health always go together. The choice is yours.